In the heart of rural Africa, far away from the noise of cities and the rush of modern life, there was a small village called Lananga. It was the kind of place where dust followed every footstep, where goats roamed freely, and where people believed they knew everything about everyone. In Lananga, privacy did not exist. If you cried at night, someone knew by morning. If you argued with your spouse, the whole village discussed it before sunset. And if someone behaved differently, they became a story. This village loved stories. And the biggest story of all was Zuri. Zuri lived with her mother, Mama Kina, in a small mud house at the edge of the village. The house was old, cracked, and simple, but always clean. Mama Kina made sure of that. Even when her body ached and her heart felt heavier than the water buckets she carried every morning. Zuri was 23 years old. But she lived like a child. Every morning, while other young women woke up early to sweep their compounds, cook breakfast, and prepare for the day, Zuri remained on her mat. Her eyes stared at the roof. Her body barely moved. She did not fetch water. She did not cook. She did not wash clothes. She did not even bathe herself. And every single day, Mama Kina filled a large plastic basin with warm water and bathed her daughter like a baby. The first time the villagers saw it, they were confused. The second time, they were shocked. By the third time, they were cruel. She is lazy, women said, shaking their heads. A grown woman being washed by her mother. Shameful. She will never marry, men laughed. That girl is useless. Zuri heard the whispers. But she never reacted. Her silence only made them louder. Mama Kina, however, heard everything, and felt every word like fire on her skin. Once, at the river, a woman mocked her openly. "Why do you waste water on that girl?" The woman asked loudly. "She eats your food and does nothing. Let her suffer." Mama Kina did not respond. She lowered her head, filled her bucket, and walked away. But that night, alone in her hut, she cried silently. Because she remembered who Zuri used to be. Zuri was not always like this. She used to laugh, loudly. She used to sing while sweeping. She used to dream. Mama Kina remembered the day Zuri told her, "Mama, one day I will build you a big house." Those words echoed in her heart every time she bathed her daughter's motionless body. Something had stolen that girl. Something the village never asked about. Something Mama Kina feared to name. One hot afternoon, as Mama Kina bathed Zuri outside, children gathered nearby. They pointed and giggled. "Look," one boy shouted. "She cannot even wash herself." Zuri flinched. Just slightly. Mama Kina noticed. Her hands froze in the water. For the first time in months. Zuri reacted. That small movement shook Mama Kina's soul. That night, Zuri screamed in her sleep. A scream so sharp, so painful, it woke the neighbors. Mama Kina rushed to her side. Zuri's body was shaking violently. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered words that made Mama Kina's blood run cold. "Please, don't close the door. Please. I will be quiet." Mama Kina held her tightly. And in that moment, she knew. This was not laziness. This was brokenness. And the village of Lananga had no idea that they were about to be shocked in a way they would never forget. The sun rose slowly over Lananga the next morning, painting the dusty roads and clay rooftops in golden light. The village was waking up, as it always did, to the same songs of roosters and distant market calls. But in Zuri's small compound, something had shifted. Mama Kina had stayed awake most of the night, rocking her daughter's trembling body in her arms. The words Zuri had whispered, the fear etched into her bones, were still ringing in Mama Kina's ears. "Please, don't lock the door. Please. I will be quiet." Mama Kina's heart ached, but she could not cry now. Not yet. She had to be strong, for her daughter. She had to protect Zuri in a world that had already judged her for weakness. For silence, for survival. By mid-morning, the villagers had started gathering again, curious as always. Word travels faster than the wind in a small village. And Mama Kinna already knew who would be watching from the corners of the street. Look. She's still like a child. A woman whispered loudly, as if Mama Kinna could not hear. She should be out fetching water or cooking. Not being bathed by her mother like this. Another chimed in. Mama Kinna ignored them. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She simply continued her work, filling a large basin with warm water. Today, however, she did something different. She didn't just wash Zuri's body. She spoke to her. Zuri, she said softly, her hands steady in the water. You have nothing to fear here. Not today, not ever. Zuri's eyes opened slowly. For the first time in months. They held a spark, a tiny flicker of life that had been missing for years. The villagers leaned closer, sensing a story, but they did not understand. Mama Kinna continued, you are not lazy. You are not weak. You survived something terrible. And you are learning, in your own way, to come back to life. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. Some shook their heads. Others whispered apologies they didn't mean. But a few watched with curiosity, unsure of what they had missed. Mama Kinna's voice grew stronger. You were trapped, my daughter. Trapped by those who should have protected you, trapped by fear, trapped by shame. And now, it is time to heal. Zuri flinched at the words, but she didn't resist. Her hands clutched her mother's arms. Do you understand? Mama Kinna asked. A small nod. Good, Mama Kinna said, her eyes scanning the crowd. And to all of you who think you understand someone's life by watching a few moments, listen well. Not everything you see is the truth. Not every silence is consent. Not every stillness is laziness. The villagers went silent. Then, a boy from the marketplace called out mockingly. But she's still not walking properly. Isn't that laziness? Mama Kinna turned to him. You do not see the battles she fought. You do not see the nights she cried herself awake. You do not see the hands that held her steady when she was broken. And that, my child, is strength. By now, Zuri was standing, her legs shaky. Her body trembling, but she was standing. The villagers gasped. It was a moment of quiet shock. Not because Zuri was lazy. Not because she was helpless. But because they finally realized that what they had judged for years was not laziness, it was trauma. Deep, hidden, and almost invisible. Mama Kinna knelt beside her daughter. Come, my child. Let us show them what strength really looks like. Slowly, Zuri stepped out of the basin. Wet hair plastered to her face, her eyes bright. Scanning the crowd that had mocked her for years. For the first time, there was no fear in her gaze. Only defiance. Only survival. Only the truth. The village elders exchanged uneasy glances. They had laughed. They had judged. They had whispered. And now, in front of their eyes, they were confronted with a reality they could not ignore. Mama Kinna raised her hand to the crowd, steady and unwavering. This child, she said, is my daughter. She has survived what you could not even imagine. And today, she will walk into the light of her own life. Whether you approve or not. Then, Zuri did something extraordinary. She took a deep breath, and for the first time in her life, she spoke in a clear, strong voice. I am not lazy. I am not weak. I am alive. And nothing you have said or done can take that away from me. Silence fell over Lananga. Even the children stopped pointing. Even the women who whispered began to look ashamed. Even the men, who had joked about her, realized that strength is not always visible, and sometimes it comes wrapped in silence. In suffering, and in survival. Mama Kinna embraced her daughter. Wet, trembling, but unbroken. And in that moment, everyone who had ever judged, mocked, or whispered began to understand, finally, that true courage is not in what the eye can see, but in what the heart survives. But this was only the beginning. Because not everyone in the village would accept this truth easily. And as Mama Kina and Zuri would soon discover, some people's cruelty is patient. And it waits. Mama Kina stepped forward, her own voice firm. This is my daughter. She has survived horrors beyond your imagination. And today, she walks in the sunlight while all of you are in the shadows of your ignorance. The wind blew through Lunanga, carrying her words like a storm. Then the unimaginable happened. A group of villagers who had mocked her most loudly approached. One of them, a young woman named Lela, said, We are sorry. We did not know. Zuri looked at her calmly. It is not enough to apologize, she said. You must change. You must see the truth before judging the next person. Or you will create another child like me. The elders of the village realized that day that strength and survival were not always visible. But the biggest twist had yet to come. As Zuri and Mama Kina returned to their hut that evening, a stranger stood by the fence. He was tall, wearing simple but neat clothes. His eyes were kind yet sharp. My name is Kofi, he said. I have been sent by the city council. They heard of Zuri's story. They want to help her rebuild her life, properly, safely. Zuri's mother gasped. Rebuild? Yes, Kofi said. She has potential. She can learn a trade, go to school, work, and reclaim the life stolen from her. We will cover everything. And she deserves it. Tears streamed down Mama Kina's face. Not tears of shame this time. Tears of hope. Zuri looked at him. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Kofi said. Actions will speak for you. That night, Zuri finally slept peacefully. For the first time in years, she dreamed not of fear or silence, but of freedom. And as she dreamed, the village of Lunanga stood in quiet awe. Some would never forget the lesson Zuri taught. Never judge what you do not understand. Strength can be hidden. Trauma can look like laziness. And patience may hide a storm waiting to rise. The sun rose over Lunanga, but the village was no longer the same. Whispers had turned into uneasy glances. Laughter had disappeared from the streets. The marketplace, once full of chatter mocking Zuri, now buzzed with nervous curiosity. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Zuri stood in her compound, water still dripping from her hair. Her eyes brighter than ever. She had been given a chance by the stranger, Kofi, from the city council. They had promised her education, training, and the tools to rebuild a life she never thought possible. But first, she had to claim it. She turned to her mother. Mama, she said softly, I cannot stay here forever. I need to go. I need to prove I am not the girl they think I am. Mama Kina nodded. I know, my child. And I will support you, always. But you must promise me one thing. Anything, Zuri replied. Return when you are ready, not when they say so. Return when you are strong, not when they approve. Zuri hugged her tightly, and for the first time, she felt the weight of her own life on her shoulders, not the burden of shame or fear. The next morning, she walked to the village square. Villagers gathered again, expecting the usual spectacle. But this time, it was different. Zuri stood tall, dressed in clean, simple clothes. Her hair was combed. Her eyes were sharp and confident. She spoke clearly, her voice carrying over the marketplace. I am leaving Lunanga for a time. Not because I am lazy. Not because I am weak. But because my life is mine to live. And one day, I will return, stronger than before. The villagers were silent. Mothers whispered to their children. Men shook their heads, unsure whether to be proud or ashamed. Then, a voice broke the quiet. It's true, Zuri, said Lela, the young woman who had apologized earlier. We judged you. We mocked you. And we were wrong. Zuri looked at her. It is not enough to admit you were wrong. You must learn to see, to listen, to understand. Some villagers bowed their heads. Others turned away. But all were changed. As Zuri packed the few belongings she could carry, Mama Kina watched with a mixture of pride and worry. Go, she said softly. Show them the life that belongs to you. Show them that a broken spirit can rise again. Zuri nodded and stepped onto the dusty road leading out of the village. Kofi waited with a small van from the council, ready to take her to the city for training and schooling. But before she left, she turned back one last time. The villagers were watching. Every eye on her. I am not your story, she said loudly. Do not write me. I am my own. And remember this, never mistake trauma for laziness. Never mistake silence for weakness. And never underestimate the courage of a soul that refuses to give up. And with that, she stepped into the van. In the weeks that followed, Lunanga changed. Villagers whispered, not in judgment this time, but in caution. Mothers hugged their children tighter. Fathers watched more closely. And the story of Zuri spread beyond the village, to nearby towns. And even to distant cities. Meanwhile, Zuri learned to read, to write, to manage money, and to care for herself fully. She discovered strength she had never known existed. Every day, she trained not only her body but her mind. Every night, she prayed for her mother. And for the village that had almost crushed her spirit with careless words. Then one afternoon, Zuri received a letter from the village elders. It read, Zuri, we were wrong. We now understand. We invite you to return, to speak to the village. And to teach us what it truly means to survive and to rise. We owe you this. Zuri's eyes filled with tears. Not of sadness, but of triumph. She wrote back simply. I will return. When I am ready. And when I do, the village will learn not from fear, but from strength. But the twist was yet to come. One night, as Zuri lay in her small room in the city, she received a phone call. It was Lela. Zuri, it's urgent. Something has happened in Lunanga. Your mother. She is sick. We need you. Without hesitation, Zuri grabbed her bag. For the first time, she was not going to flee fear or judgment. She was returning to protect what mattered most. And as she drove back, she realized something profound: strength is not only about survival. It is about returning, even when the world has tried to break you. That night, the moon reflected off the dusty roads leading back to Lunanga, lighting the way for a daughter who had finally learned the weight of life, love, and courage. The road back to Lunanga was dusty, lined with tall mango trees swaying gently in the evening breeze. Zuri's heart pounded in her chest, part fear, part hope, and part determination. She had grown stronger in the city. But returning to her village after everything that had happened was a test unlike any she had faced before. Mama Kinna's condition was worse than she had imagined. Lela met her at the village entrance, her face pale. "Zuri," Lela whispered, "your mother. She collapsed this morning. The healer says it's exhaustion and worry. She refuses to eat." Zuri's chest tightened. She ran toward their hut, the village now eerily silent. The same people who had mocked her months ago stood aside, watching. Some looked ashamed. Others fearful. But none dared speak. Inside the hut, Mama Kinna lay on her small bed. Her face pale, her hands trembling. When she saw Zuri, she tried to smile but the effort drained her energy. "My child. You came back," she whispered. Zuri dropped to her knees beside her mother. "Mama. I am here. I am not leaving again." She held her mother's hand tightly, feeling the frail pulse beneath her fingers. For hours, Zuri tended to Mama Kinna. She cooked a small meal, brought warm water, and carefully washed her mother's hair, not like a child, but like a daughter who had learned to give back the care she had received. Mama Kinna's eyes filled with tears, not from pain but from pride. She realized that the child she had bathed like a baby had now become a woman, capable of saving her mother. That night, as Zuri sat beside Mama Kinna, she began to tell her what had happened in the city, how she had trained, learned, and grown. She spoke not only of her own survival, but of the strength she had discovered in herself, and the lessons she wanted the village to understand. The next morning, Zuri called for the village council. Everyone came reluctantly, some with heads bowed in shame, others with curiosity burning in their eyes. "I have returned," Zuri began, her voice calm but powerful, "to finish the story the village started months ago." The elders shifted uncomfortably. They had not expected her to speak with such authority. Zuri continued, "I am not lazy. I am not weak. I am alive because my mother never gave up on me, even when all of you mocked her and me. And I have learned something that every one of you must understand." She paused, letting her words sink in. The silence was deafening. "True strength," Zuri said, "is not always visible. It hides in trauma, it whispers in silence. And it grows when nurtured with love and patience." Then, with a slow breath, she revealed the truth that would shock everyone in Lananga. "The reason I became what you called lazy, the reason I could not move or speak for months, was because of someone you trusted. Someone in this village. Someone who was supposed to protect me." Gasps erupted. Mothers clutched their children. Men shifted uneasily. The elders leaned forward, eyes wide. "You see," she said, "strength does not lie in punishment. Strength lies in lifting others. The same way my mother lifted me." Murmurs ran through the crowd. Some could not believe their eyes. They had expected vengeance, but instead, Zuri gave hope. Even the elders, who had once whispered behind closed doors about her laziness, were forced to bow their heads in respect. But the final revelation was yet to come. That evening, as the sun set, painting the village in fiery oranges and deep reds, Zuri spoke privately to the council. "The person who hurt me remains in the village. They live among you, pretending all is normal. But now, you know. You cannot ignore the truth. You cannot protect those who harm others. And you cannot allow judgment to blind you again." The council members nodded silently, understanding the weight of her words. Zuri turned to her mother. "Mama, we have done more than survive. We have changed the village. And one day, when I am strong enough, we will ensure no child here suffers as I did." Mama Kinna held her daughter close. "You are no longer my child to bathe like a baby. You are my daughter, my equal, my pride. And you are free." That night, the village slept in a way they had never known, not in ignorance, not in judgment, but in awareness. The moral of the story spread beyond Lananga, carried by travelers, merchants, and whispers of the wind. Do not judge what you do not understand. Strength is not always visible. Trauma can appear as weakness, but survival can be the greatest power of all. And Zuri. She stayed in the village long enough to teach the young women to read, to help the children carry water safely, and to train the elders in patience and understanding. When she finally returned to the city for her final education, she left behind a village transformed, a village that had learned to see, to care, and to respect the strength hidden in silence. Years later, the story of Zuri and Mama Kina would be told across generations. Children would hear it beside the fire. Mothers would tell it to their daughters. And the village of Lananga would never again mistake trauma for laziness. Because in the heart of Africa, amidst dust and sunlight, laughter and whispers, one girl's survival had become a lesson for all. Love may look like humiliation. Patience may seem like weakness. But courage hidden in care can change the world.